Sometimes, the hardest decisions we make in life aren't about choosing between right and wrong. They're about choosing between what we want and what we know is right for us. Today, I want to share with you a story that will challenge everything you think you know about love, forgiveness, and the courage it takes to walk away from someone you still deeply care about. This is the story of Andy, a 28-year-old military man, and his wife Ellie, 26. It's a story that begins with university romance and ends with one of the most heart-wrenching decisions a person can make. But more than that, it's a story about integrity, about listening to your instincts, and about the devastating moment when you realize that sometimes, love simply isn't enough. Let me take you back 8 years. Picture this: two young people at university, both in their prime, both full of dreams and possibilities. Andy meets Ellie, and it's like something out of a romantic movie. She's everything he's ever wanted. Cute, shy, nerdy, a bookworm who becomes completely obsessed with him. And she's beautiful. Within a week, they're dating. Within months, they're inseparable. For 8 years, they build a life together. They dream of a house in the countryside, away from the noise and chaos of city life. They talk about children, about growing old together, about all the plans that couples make when they believe their love can conquer anything. Andy serves in the military, which means periods of separation, but Ellie seems to handle it well. She's clingy when he comes home, the kind of clingy that makes you feel loved and wanted. She talks about him constantly to her friends, so much so that they tease her about it. She's devoted, loyal, everything you'd want in a partner. But here's the thing about life: it has a way of testing us when we least expect it. Andy takes 2 weeks of leave for his birthday. 2 weeks to spend with his wife, to visit his parents, to reconnect with old university friends. It should have been perfect. For the first few days, it was. Ellie was her usual affectionate self, excited to see him, clingy in all the right ways. Nothing seemed out of place. But then came that afternoon at the cafe. Picture this scene with me. A quaint little village cafe, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone. Ellie has apparently become a regular here while Andy's been away. They sit down, order the drinks, and a friendly waitress approaches their table. She recognizes Ellie immediately, all smiles and familiarity. And then she looks at Andy and says something that would change everything. "Oh. Nice to meet you. You must be her brother. Now, let me ask you something. If your partner was a regular somewhere they went often enough for the staff to know them well, wouldn't they know about you? Wouldn't your partner have mentioned their husband or wife at least once in casual conversation?" Andy holds up his left hand, shows his wedding ring, and says simply, "I'm her husband." The waitress's reaction tells him everything he needs to know. This isn't just an awkward mistake. Her face doesn't just drop, it crashes. This is a proper, "oh fuck," moment, as Andy describes it. She mumbles an apology and practically runs back to the counter. And in that moment, Andy feels something he's never felt about his wife before. That gut instinct, that same feeling that saved his life in the military, that voice that says, something is very, very wrong here. Now, some of you might be thinking, come on, it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe the waitress was new, maybe she just made an assumption. But Andy knows better. He's learned to trust his instincts, and his instincts are screaming at him. Think about it logically. Ellie is obsessed with Andy. Her friends tease her about how much she talks about him. She's clingy, devoted, the type of person who would naturally mention her husband in conversation. There's only one reason she would be a regular somewhere and the staff wouldn't know she was married. She'd been there with someone else. That night, Andy tries to check her phone, but discovers she's changed her passcode. The same passcode she's had for 8 years. The one he knew without thinking about it. Suddenly changed. But phones have face recognition now, don't they? So Andy waits. He waits until she's asleep, turns on his bedside lamp, waits for her to roll onto her back, brushes her fringe out of the way, and holds the phone up to her face. Now, I know some of you are thinking this invasion of privacy isn't justified. And under normal circumstances, you'd be right. But Andy has never, not once in 8 years, felt the need to check her phone. This man has trusted his wife completely, and now every instinct he has is telling him something is wrong. He opens WhatsApp first, then Snapchat. Nothing unusual. Chats with her mum, her brother, a couple of childhood friends. Everything seems normal. He scrolls through twice, finds nothing, and puts the phone back. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe his instincts had finally failed him. And then the phone buzzes. Andy picks up the phone again, unlocks it with face recognition one more time, and reads the notification that appears on the screen. It's from Ellie's childhood friend. And the message reads, "Hey sexy, what are you doing still awake? Wanna sneak out for some nighttime fun tongue out? Let me paint you the full picture here. This isn't just any childhood friend. This is someone Ellie had told Andy about years ago. She'd been open about her bisexuality from the beginning of their relationship. She'd even told him about a brief teenage relationship with this exact friend, something that had been awkward, and ended with him agreeing to never tell anyone. Andy wasn't bothered by his wife's bisexuality. That wasn't the issue. The issue was that his wife was clearly in an active relationship with someone else. Now here's something interesting that Andy mentions. He doesn't feel as sick or emasculated as he thinks he would have if it had been a man. Maybe that's sexist, he wonders, but that's how he feels. The betrayal is the same regardless, but somehow the emotional impact is different. But make no mistake, he is absolutely furious. Andy describes a moment that I think is crucial to understanding who he is as a person. He admits that for just a split second, the thought of strangling her crosses his mind. Just for a moment. He comes from a family with short tempers, he's had physical altercations with his own father, and he's never properly learned to manage his anger until adulthood. But here's what separates Andy from so many others in similar situations. He recognizes this impulse, and he refuses to let himself become that person. Instead of confronting her in that moment, instead of waking her up and exploding, he gets up and leaves the house. He walks half a mile up the road, half a mile back. He sits on their little bench by the front door, the bench they probably picked out together, in front of the house they dreamed of owning together, and he thinks, "Happy birthday to me, eh?" Can you imagine? It's his birthday leave. He's supposed to be celebrating, spending quality time with his wife, visiting family. Instead, he's sitting alone in the dark, his entire world crashing down around him. But Andy doesn't wallow. He's a man of action. He pulls out his phone and Googles divorce solicitors. His mind is already made up. He's photographed the evidence on her phone, the message, the last 24 hours of conversations on Snapchat. He knows what he has to do. He spends the night awake, sending emails to lawyers, trying to distract himself with video games, and then doing something that speaks volumes about his character. He starts packing up Ellie's belongings. Andy doesn't just throw her stuff in boxes and tell her to get out. He carefully packs the things in the kitchen that belong to her. He writes her a note explaining that he wants to keep the house, but he'll pay her back her fair share of what she contributed. He does the math, figures out exactly how much each of them put into the shared life. Even in his anger, even in his heartbreak, he's being fair. He's being honorable. As morning comes, Andy makes a decision that might surprise you. He goes to church. Now, here's something fascinating about Andy. He calls himself a Christian and tries to act like one, but he can't bring himself to literally believe in God. He comes from a militantly atheist family. His father once said that if God ever showed up, he'd shoot him. Andy wants to believe, but something in his brain just won't let him. But he goes to church anyway, because he needs to talk to someone wise. While Andy is talking to the priest, his phone starts buzzing. Ellie has found his note. She's awake, and she's trying to reach him. But Andy doesn't look at his phone. He's seeking guidance. The priest tells him something profound. He shouldn't ignore her. Even if the relationship is over, he should speak to her in person. Not for her sake, but for his own. And Andy realizes the priest is right. Andy drives home, his phone still buzzing every few minutes. He doesn't have the heart to look. He takes off his shoes. Even in this moment, he's respectful of their home, and goes upstairs to the bedroom. The scene he finds breaks your heart. Ellie is there, packing suitcases haphazardly, crying so hard she doesn't even hear him come in. The bedroom is a disaster. When she finally sees him, she collapses to the floor like a crumpled piece of tin foil. And then comes the apology. Not lies, not excuses, not gaslighting or manipulation. Just raw, honest, devastating apology. I'm so sorry. I never should have done it. I'm sorry I hurt you. I was selfish. Andy can see that she hates herself. And here's the thing that makes this story so complex, so heartbreaking: he still loves her. Even knowing what she's done, even knowing he can't stay with her, he still loves her. The priest's wisdom becomes clear. Andy needs to forgive her, not necessarily to take her back, but to give them both peace. What happens next is what Andy calls the bit that's kinda fucked up, and I have to warn you, this is where the story becomes truly heartbreaking. Andy tells Ellie that he forgives her, but that she is no longer his wife. And he watches her heart break in real time. What follows is a desperate plea that reveals the depth of Ellie's devastation. She doesn't just beg him to take her back. She offers to become his slave, to let him beat her, abuse her, to do anything to her if she can just stay with him. She uses words that I won't repeat, but the message is clear. She would accept any form of degradation if it meant not losing him. Andy's response reveals everything about his character. I don't want you to be a slave. I want you to live your own life. Just not with me. But Ellie's desperation reaches a terrifying peak. She tells him she can't live without him, that he's the best thing that ever happened to her, that she can never forgive herself. And then she says something that stops everyone in their tracks. If you won't take me back, please just kill me instead. Andy starts crying as he tells this part of the story, and frankly, so was I as I read it. This man still loves his wife desperately. He wants to take her back. Every fiber of his being is screaming at him to forgive and forget, to hold her and tell her it's okay. But he doesn't. And this is where we see the true measure of Andy's character. He says something that I think we should all remember. Even though I'm not really a man of God, I am a man of integrity. I can't go back on this decision. Andy drives Ellie to her parents' house. She cries the entire way. At one point, she says something that nearly breaks his resolve. I've cried so much my throat hurts. Can you imagine wanting to comfort someone you love more than anything, knowing that comforting them would mean compromising your own principles? Andy wants nothing more than to hug her and tell her everything is okay. He knows that if he sends just one text saying, I love you, he'll take her back. But he doesn't text her. And remarkably, she doesn't try to contact him either. It's been a few days since Andy shared this story. He still has a week of leave left. Leave that was supposed to be about celebration and connection, now transformed into a period of grief and solitude. He's bought himself a fancy bottle of whiskey, planning to drink himself to sleep because he can't bear to sleep in the bed he shared with Ellie. The bed where they dreamed about their future, where they talked about the children they were going to have together. Apart from the priest, Andy hasn't spoken to anyone about what happened. He's processing this devastating betrayal alone, in the house they chose together, surrounded by the remnants of a life they built over 8 years. Now, let me ask you something. What would you do in Andy's situation? Here's a man who discovered his wife's infidelity, but also discovered something else: genuine remorse. Ellie didn't lie when confronted. She didn't make excuses or try to justify her actions. She didn't blame Andy for being away with the military. She took full responsibility and begged for forgiveness. She offered to cut off all contact with the other person. She offered to do anything, be anything, accept any treatment if it meant staying married. And Andy still said no. Some people might call him unforgiving. Some might say that if she's genuinely sorry and willing to do the work, the marriage could be saved. After all, she's bisexual. Maybe this relationship with her childhood friend was about exploring a part of herself that she couldn't explore with Andy. But Andy saw something that I think a lot of people miss in these situations. He saw that forgiveness and reconciliation are two different things. Andy forgave Ellie. He told her so directly. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending the betrayal didn't happen. It doesn't mean accepting behavior that violates your fundamental boundaries. It doesn't mean staying in a relationship that has been irreparably damaged. Andy understood that forgiving Ellie was about freeing himself from bitterness and hatred. It was about giving them both peace. But taking her back, that would have required him to compromise his integrity, to go against everything he believed about trust and commitment. Think about what trust really means in a relationship. It's not just about fidelity, though that's certainly part of it. It's about knowing that your partner will consider your feelings before making major decisions. It's about believing that they value your relationship enough to communicate with you about their struggles and desires. Ellie didn't just cheat on Andy. She made a conscious decision to pursue a relationship with someone else while letting Andy believe everything was fine. She looked him in the eye every day, accepted his love and affection, made plans for their future, all while living a double life. There's something else to consider here. Andy is a military man. He's someone who understands duty, honor, and integrity not just as concepts, but as ways of life. In the military, your word has to mean something. Your commitment has to be absolute, because people's lives depend on it. When Andy made his wedding vows, he meant them completely. When he committed to Ellie, it wasn't just a romantic gesture, it was a sacred promise. Her betrayal wasn't just about sex or even emotional infidelity. It was about breaking a fundamental oath. And here's something that I think is crucial to understand. Andy's decision isn't about punishment. He's not leaving Ellie to hurt her or to make her pay for what she did. He's leaving because he knows that once trust is broken at this level, it can never be truly rebuilt. He could stay. He could try to work it out. But he would spend the rest of his life wondering. Every time she was late coming home, every time she was secretive about her phone, every time she went out with friends, he would wonder. That's not a marriage. That's a prison sentence for both of them. Perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of this entire story is that Andy still loves Ellie deeply. This isn't a case of love dying in the face of betrayal. This is something much more complex and painful. Love that survives betrayal but recognizes that survival isn't enough. Andy loves Ellie enough to let her go. He loves himself enough to walk away from a relationship that would require him to compromise his core values. That takes a strength that most people never have to find. When Ellie begged him to take her back, when she offered to be his slave, when she asked him to kill her rather than leave her, Andy could have taken the easy path. He could have said, "Okay, we'll work it out. But you have to do exactly what I say. You have to earn back my trust." But Andy recognized that this would have been toxic for both of them. It would have turned their marriage into a relationship between a prisoner and a warden. Ellie would have spent years trying to prove herself worthy of trust that might never fully return. Andy would have spent years being the arbiter of her worthiness. That's not love. That's not marriage. That's mutual destruction disguised as reconciliation. Some people might wonder whether the fact that Ellie's affair was with a woman should make a difference. After all, she's bisexual. Maybe this was about exploring a part of herself that she couldn't explore within her marriage to Andy. But here's the thing. Sexual orientation doesn't excuse betrayal. Being bisexual doesn't give someone the right to have relationships with people of the same sex while married to someone of the opposite sex, any more than being heterosexual would give someone the right to cheat with someone of the opposite sex. If Ellie was struggling with her sexuality, if she felt like she was missing something important in her life, the honest thing to do would have been to talk to Andy about it. Maybe they could have found a way to address her needs within their marriage. Maybe they could have opened their relationship in some way. Maybe they would have realized they weren't compatible after all. But instead of having that difficult conversation, Ellie chose deception. She chose to have her cake and eat it too, keeping the security and love of her marriage while pursuing excitement elsewhere. This story doesn't exist in a vacuum. Andy and Ellie's betrayal and separation will affect dozens of people. Their families, who probably love them both and are now forced to choose sides or navigate the awkwardness of a broken relationship. Their friends, who will have to decide whether to maintain friendships with both of them or pick a side. There's the childhood friend who participated in breaking up a marriage. There's Ellie's family, who will have to support the daughter through the consequences of her choices while potentially understanding why Andy couldn't forgive her. And then there are all the plans that are now destroyed. The children they were supposed to have. The future they were supposed to build. The house in the countryside that was supposed to be their forever home. Andy is now facing the prospect of starting over at 28. After 8 years with someone, after believing he'd found his life partner, he's back to square one. That's terrifying at any age, but especially when you've built your entire adult life around one person. Right now, Andy is alone with his fancy bottle of whiskey and his thoughts. Some people might see this as sad, but I see it as necessary. He needs time to process not just the betrayal, but his own response to it. It would be easy to make impulsive decisions right now. To text Ellie and take her back because the loneliness is unbearable. To lash out in anger and make the divorce as painful as possible. To start drinking heavily or throw himself into work to avoid dealing with his emotions. But Andy seems to be choosing a different path. He's sitting with his pain. He's allowing himself to feel it fully instead of numbing it or avoiding it. That takes courage. He's also chosen to share his story, which suggests he's looking for connection and understanding, even if he can't get it from the person he most wants to connect with. What can we learn from Andy and Ellie's story? First, trust your instincts. Andy knew something was wrong from the moment that waitress mistook him for Ellie's brother. His gut told him what his mind didn't want to believe. How many of us ignore those warning signs because we don't want to face difficult truths? Second, integrity isn't just about doing the right thing when it's easy. It's about doing the right thing when it costs you everything. Andy could have taken Ellie back and probably been happier in the short term. But he chose the harder path because he knew it was the right one for him. Third, forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. You can forgive someone for their own peace of mind while still maintaining boundaries that protect your well-being. Fourth, love sometimes means letting go. The fact that Andy still loves Ellie doesn't mean he should stay with her. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's destructive behavior, even if that means walking away. Where does Andy go from here? That's a question only he can answer. But I have hope for him. He's a man who knows his own mind. He's someone who can make difficult decisions and stick to them. He's proven that he can forgive without being a doormat, that he can love without losing himself. The pain he's feeling now is real and valid. The grief for the relationship that's ending, for the future that won't happen, for the person he thought Ellie was, all of that is legitimate and necessary. But this isn't the end of Andy's story. It's the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. He's still young. He has skills, values, and experiences that will serve him well in building a new life. Maybe someday he'll find someone who shares his commitment to honesty and integrity. Maybe he'll have the children he always wanted, just with a different person. Maybe he'll discover parts of himself that he never knew existed because they were overshadowed by his relationship with Ellie. As I finish telling you Andy's story, I'm struck by something profound. In a world where we're often told that love conquers all, where we're encouraged to fight for our relationships no matter what, Andy's story reminds us that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes integrity matters more than comfort. Sometimes self-respect matters more than avoiding loneliness. Sometimes the courage to start over matters more than the security of staying in a broken situation. Andy's story isn't just about infidelity or divorce. It's about the strength it takes to live according to your values when doing so costs you everything you thought you wanted. It's about the difference between loving someone and being able to build a life with them. It's about the recognition that some betrayals, no matter how remorseful the betrayer, change the fundamental nature of a relationship forever. And ultimately, it's about the hope that exists on the other side of even the most devastating endings. The hope that integrity, even when it's painful, leads to a life you can be proud of. And to everyone else listening, remember Andy's story the next time you're faced with a choice between what's easy and what's right. Remember that sometimes the greatest act of love is having the courage to let go. Sometimes, love really isn't enough, but integrity always is. Thank you for listening to this story of heartbreak, integrity, and the courage to start over. If this story has touched you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, if you're going through something similar, you're not alone. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the life you were meant to live.